This is the meeting's being recorded, by the way. This is the November 24th monthly meeting of East Norwalk Neighborhood Association. We're meeting in the fourth week. We actually postponed from last week, so we're a little bit off schedule here. The Just a couple of quick announcements, in case you haven't seen it in the email or on social media. The oak tree has been scheduled for removal on Monday, December 1st. Of course, we're all disappointed in this. Um, I'm sure that we're going to discuss this a little bit further tonight, but ENNA has not technically given up on taking a look at some options to send this back to the drawing board. We're actually waiting to hear from an attorney right now on what it might take, what the procedure would be, what it would take to possibly file for an injunction. But his response literally was, it's a heavy lift to do something like that. Contrary to what I thought, but we'll get some more information on that anyway. And then also, if you haven't seen or been around town in the past couple days, the Strawberry Hill underpass at the railroad has finally reopened. A little bit late, but it's open now. And then for public hearings, I'm not going to go through the city meetings. A lot of them will actually get canceled in December. But there is a public hearing that we'll be interested in for a rewrite of the demolition delay ordinance. And that entails when a property owner files to demolish a structure, the law allows a certain amount of time for anyone to file for a delay so that it can be investigated whether or not the structure has any historic value, either the structure itself or the architect or the use or the occupants. And so that's in the process of being rewritten, and the draft is coming up for public hearing on December 10th. And we'll be speaking to that as well. There's no guest speakers for tonight, and we are having an open mic night tonight. Okay, so we are going to open up the floor here.
Lisa had her hand up. You can unmute Lisa.
We should be unmuted.
There you go.
And I'm Lisa's deeper voice. I just happened to notice driving around that the house on the property to the west of the East Norwalk Library was recently demolished. So I think something is moving ahead with that. It was originally a somewhat silly proposal to cram way too much into way too small a space, but now the house is gone. So curious if there's any rumor mongering about what's happening there.
Yeah, hi, thanks for that, Dave. Hi, you guys, and thanks for hopping on there. Yeah, so as of this point, I mean, we are expecting another application to come in. There's something that could be being worked on right now with the staff at Planning and Zoning, but nothing that we've been made aware of. Typically, we don't hear about anything until they actually file an application for a use. But I will follow up on it, and we do expect for an application to come in. And I believe it's with the same owner as well.
Let me do one more. Okay, and I just happened to notice that the weed garden at the former site of Jimmy's Deli is looking absolutely healthy and beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's going to become a new pollinator garden. Who knows?
Yeah. We actually filed a blight complaint, and the notice went out to the owner, same owner that has filed multiple applications to develop. The applications come in, they're not meeting the zoning regulations, they're not complying with a number of aspects. And really, that all goes back to the reason why it doesn't comply is because, or it's difficult to comply, is the owner of that property is still trying to shove 22 units on that site. And they're just trying to finagle any which way that they can in order to shove those in there, and they're just not making the cut. So as of today, they withdrew the application for the second time, maybe the third time, at least the second time. But we did file a blight complaint for the overgrown weeds and there's also a portion of the fence that was down there. So the notice went out to the owner. Um, a zoning violation citation or violation citation goes out. I think the date is December 10th. If they don't reply and get it cleaned up, and then from that whatever date the actual citation is, the daily fines start racking up. And I had a lengthy conversation with the blade officer that we don't want any exceptions on this. We want the fines to start the day the citation goes out, and for them to rack up daily until it's cleaned up. No hardship, no nothing, no just get those fines going. This isn't the first time with that property that we've had to file complaints and have had a non-responsive and dismissive property owner, um, fairly arrogant person who apparently doesn't think he has to comply with what our regulations are. So we'll see how this one goes.
Sounds like the guys at the other end of Mill Pond. Sorry, I didn't say that.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah,
one other,
you could see a pattern here. Sorry, Lee, go ahead.
that's okay. One other thing on, speaking of Mill Pond, that whatever it is, dome on
Yep.
top of
The weather vane.
the weather vane with the heron on top, what gives with that? Is that was that in the original design, and is it
Yeah.
compliant with
Yeah.
code?
And actually, is there a weather vane on top of it now?
Yes. Yes, it's
Okay.
actually
I haven't seen it since it.
it's kind of a very pretty copper heron, a great
Nice.
blue heron.
Okay. Yeah, which is what it should be for a New England, should be a New England small cupola with a heron or some other type creature. When I spoke with Steve Kleppen or emailed with him or Brian or someone, um, apparently there were some what they considered minor changes after this application went in, and in terms of height and some other aspects of the structure itself. I certainly wouldn't consider that thing minor. I think it's you know, everything there is a monstrosity, but that in particular is an eyesore. Um, and honestly, Lisa, I don't know that there's anything we can do about it unless we go back and have zoning point out to us exactly um, what we thought was approved, what ultimately got changed that doesn't appear to have gone through to the commission, and prove to us that it complies with whatever they thought they changed. And if it doesn't, and to see if we can get them to take it down.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a question in chat. Do we know how many total parking spaces are there at the Mill Pond development?
I don't know what's physically there, and I'd have to look up to see what the regulations required. I'd have to look at the permit for that. Presumably, someone will need to, before they get their CO and all their final approval, somebody would need to count those and make sure it's in compliance. But we do know they're actively marketing both the apartments and the commercial property at this point. And we have no idea what the commercial tenants might end up looking like either.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad somebody brought up parking though, because I'll need to follow up on it in the December meeting. I think 1 or 2 meetings ago, I mentioned to you guys that it was actually Harry Rilling in a traffic authority meeting, of which he is the chair. He actually raised the point that he didn't recollect that the lane change and the on-street parking ever came before the traffic authority. And any change like that would have had to have gone before them to get approval. And no one actually brought it before the authority. And so I would have expected that it would come up at the next meeting, but I didn't see it on an agenda. So my feeling is that even if they do, it'll just be a formality and they'll just go through the motions to approve it. at this point because it's done. But it's interesting how something like that can slip by, especially when it's something that would come before a commission or an authority that the mayor actually sits on. Just saying.
Okay, I have somebody with their hands up, it just says user, so please identify yourself, please.
Hello, user.
That'd
Yeah.
be me. I
Hi,
couldn't
Deb.
figure out how to put my name down, so it just said user. I'm not a user. I'm a person. Jim Anderson,
Hi, Deb.
too old, well cord, for the record. Okay, a number of things, if I may. While I was putting up the portion yellow tape on the oak tree, metaphors, obviously, I did a walk in and I seen where the parking was. I didn't have my heart on, but I saw a number of other people not having theirs. I also had my dog. There is parking, and I believe, Diane, it was in a range of 130, if I recall. There is a parking area underneath that building. It's pretty big. Um, it looked, I didn't count the spaces, but it looked well over 100. And that was that. I also saw the public, what I thought was the public access to the back of Mill Pond, which is about 20 feet of water, and the rest on both sides. They look like weeds to me, but I'm sure Musack will say it's some other nature-loving weed or something. I didn't see any animals, but there's a small little walkway that goes in the back there. What else? There's so much I could say. It's big. It really is a big building. I mean, you go into it, it's lack of better words again, a monstrosity. It's from the back. It sort of looks like it just blows up at you. Um, Architecturally, I knew Byfield from when he started on Water Street. I thought he could have done better. His intent was good by taking what I call plagiarized architecture from the other side of East Avenue, my opinion. You're looking at it, it sort of grows on you, whether it's my giving up or not giving up or whatever, but it's a decent building. The top, by the way, was not in the original plans, and that was a topic of controversy as far as the height. And if you recall, Dan, they were actually debating the peak of the roof, and they wanted to either add or something else. The cupola, I believe it's called, was never on the original, including the rectangular or square that's closer to my home. But it's there, and there's no way you're going to get that off now. It's the same thing. Regarding the parking, $92,000 of our tax money was paid and approved by the council to do a study. Whether that study was required by the state, which is that section of 136, but we taxpayers paid that. I don't know what the study was. I don't know what when they decided to go down from 2 lanes to one, or use the 10 spots that are there for just the commercial. Um, Whatever. It's that's all I'm going to say. If there's any questions or something about it, I'll just tell you what I remember, and that's all.
Thanks, Jim. That's helpful. The I think the parking regs at that time under the EVTZ zone, the Village Transit Zone, was at 1.3 per unit.
Right.
So that
That's
would
right.
have put it at the 100, and then the additional ones on street. We've also suggested that if it's not intended for that development, actually, it was one of you guys who suggested this. I don't know if he's on here. That if that's the case, then there should be no parking, like from 10 p.m. to 6 p.m. because, the commercial businesses are 11 p.m. to say 6 a.m. Because the commercial businesses aren't open. And then none of the other commercial, the existing commercial businesses, they all have plenty of parking. And what we contended was if that was any difficulty there in the center, that Spinnaker certainly could have given all the parking spaces he owns at the train station there to support some of the local businesses with people not having to pay for it, which is just crazy. So it'll be interesting to see if this comes back before the traffic authority. And if I don't see it on an agenda, I will raise the point that even if it's after the fact, I want to see it on the record that they reviewed it and then um, get it on the record, that they voted to keep it then, which is, likely what they're going to do. Jim, well, we have you, if you have a minute.
I was going to add
You,
to more, but I didn't want to step on anybody else. Yeah,
yeah.
sure, Dan.
Just quickly, if you could, you and I were talking about where the driveway entrance starts here, where all the water pools right in front of.
Yes,
It's ironic
absolutely.
that we're losing the tree because of drainage, but there's a huge. I wouldn't even call it a puddle. It's like it's a little pond right there,
Absolutely.
which is going to ice over, and anyway, it's just going to create all kinds of problems. Can you speak to what I mean?
Hmm.
Is that going to be remedied?
Sure.
Asking you to put your professional hat on.
From the way it appears, the asphalt apron, I guess, of that building, either they're going to have to raise it or lessen the pitch to meet up with the slope of the cemetery street. It's important because it's right on that turn. And I look to where the new catch basins, as you proceed towards Cat Pasture, there's two new catch basins, and catch basins are typically on the edge of a curb. So that curb, the existing curb, is going to be coming out, it looks like almost 10 feet. So, and this goes back to what I viewed my opinion on the tree. That tree never had a chance, whether they bogged it on purpose or didn't on purpose. That curb is going to be coming way out. Or else, why would they put in? Next time everyone's going by there, you can see the catch basins. It appears like they're in the middle of the street. But
Right.
again,
Yeah.
you don't put a catch basin in the middle of the street. You put it on the edge of a curb. So,
Right.
it's like that. So that curb is going to be coming out.
Mhm.
Maybe at that point, this puddling that's happening now will alleviate itself after they change the elevation of that curve. I don't know if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah, that does. And it also makes sense now why, we're all looking at catch basins in the middle of the road. But
Right.
obviously, because it's hard to visualize when we're looking at these plans, especially for those of us who are, not in any engineers or not in any trade that would notice it,
Mhm.
to envision how these things to scale. But now when you say that that's where the curb would line up with, yeah, that's pretty horrifying to think that it
It
comes
is.
out as far as to meet those catch basins.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Anybody say anything to you when you wandered over there? Just curious.
I had a couple of looks, and of course, I had my dog with me.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
there is one thing, and I honestly, I don't want to take a step on anybody else. The house right opposite that, and I also want to speak a little bit about the Mason Lodge,
Mhm.
in positive
Please.
terms
Yeah.
so far. The Italia Club Italia is renting. I had a couple of people, oh, they're buying the building. No, they're not buying the building. They're renting the smaller L shape of the Mason Lodge. The Masons are still active. Um, they, as far as I know, have no intention of selling it. That I've heard, but I'm not that. I live across the street, but I'm not that tight with them as a Knight of Columbus, where you have a dichotomy of interests, of religious interests, not too far apart. But my other question, Diane, was that little white house that's next to the trees that the Masons were trying to sell. It's a single family white house. I heard rumors, and again, rumors are like what, everyone has one. Um, that's going to be either be knocked down or there's a proposal to put 9 rentals there and access through Old Royal Court where I live. Have you heard that?
I only hear the rumors too, and
Okay.
I've heard that. I think the way that I heard it was that someone was looking into what they could do, which is
Okay.
generally the first question that gets asked over there at City Hall. Um, what are the possible uses, especially with the zone changes? And I don't know if I heard 9, or maybe you and I were talking about that recently, but
Mhm.
um, you know, that would be the first thing that somebody would be asking is how many they could do there. I haven't heard anything specifically. Every once in a while, when I ask zoning if something is about to come in, or if they're talking to someone. They seem to be a little bit more friendly now with telling us, yeah, we're talking to somebody, but um, they haven't submitted plans yet. But at
All
least
right.
they'll tell us that, it's on the radar screen.
But I can't envision. I think that's how the sale of the 4 acres, supposedly the 4 acres that Senator Duff was the agent for, that also was a rumor that went haywire. Oh,
Mhm.
he's selling the building. No, they were not selling the building. Literally, there's somehow another 4 acres of that trees,
Mhm.
and that's what they were trying to sell to better
Mhm.
that building.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, the only really
yeah.
logical, you wouldn't want another driveway there, traffic stopping, making a left into that property, regardless of how many apartments, with also one cemetery street directly opposite it.
Right.
So you can
Well,
see
the
traffic.
interesting thing with that, though, I don't think a lot of people realize, is that with the changes in the traffic pattern that are happening there at Gregory and Cemetery, where the yield um, has always been at Cemetery to yield to the oncoming Gregory traffic,
Hmm.
that changes under the
Yes,
final plan. It will
yes,
be the Gregory traffic that will yield to Cemetery traffic,
that's right.
which literally makes no sense at all. You would never take the predominant straight flow of traffic and have that be the yield. It's just
It's
completely
the
crazy.
basic.
So something tells me there's something else
Hmm.
in that general vicinity that could be going on. I can only tell you that a Mason told me that the lodge, is not for sale, that everything is working out well with the Italian club, and that the parcel of land is no longer for sale.
Good.
But
And that's
that
zoned,
was
I
the answer.
believe.
Not I don't know, or things could change, but that was the last thing, and that was literally just 3 weeks ago. So
Yeah,
we'll
that's
see.
good.
Yeah. Thank you,
I bet.
Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, Charles, who else do we have?
Okay, I just have a quick question since
Mhm.
we're on Cemetery Street. Do we know if that is designated as a snow emergency route with the
Um,
upcoming bad weather?
I don't know, but I can look it up because the listing is on the city website of the
Okay,
snow routes. But I don't think so, because normally those have the signage on them. It has the signage that says emergency route, and I don't think I've ever seen a sign there.
okay, thank you. Becca has her hand up.
Hi, on the same topic we've been discussing
Okay.
so
Hi,
far.
Becca. Yeah.
Hi, do we have any update? Obviously, some of the road work has begun, but
Mhm.
on when the bike lane is actually going to get striped, because
Mhm.
it remains a very dangerous area to be a
Mhm.
cyclist, scooter,
Mhm.
or pedestrian, and I would hope that it can get mitigated before it ends badly.
Yeah. I don't, but I can certainly find out. And I should be able to actually even find out this week. So some of the questions that are coming up, even with the short week, I expect there's some folks around at City Hall, and I'll get some of these answers for you in a weekend email.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Alex, you can
Yeah, I
unmute.
just want to respond to
Hey,
something
Alex.
Hi, just want to respond to something that Charles said. This is not anything to do with the meeting, but it's kind of funny. When I became mayor, we had a huge snowfall. I declared a snow emergency. Turned out the city did not have a snow emergency ordinance, so nothing happened. So we passed one, and now we've designated snow emergency routes. So every time there's a big snow and they declare a snow emergency, I'm glad there's now an ordinance in place to actually do something.
Yeah, me too. It's important, especially on some of these roads, and I think even on a lot of the streets we live on. I've just, I'm kind of I send the email around with storms like, please park in your driveway. Let the plow guys do what they got to do. Just, get your car off the street if you possibly can. Um, and this is becoming more of an issue because, I won't pass the opportunity to say it's more and more people, and the cars are not going away. So, this is all ties back into people and cars and parking and not enough room. Okay. Well, we had a lot more people hop on here. Hi, everybody. Please don't be shy.
Okay,
If
Becca.
you have a question,
luck.
if you have a comment, if you have a suggestion, it's open mic night. Anything goes. Charles, who else we got?
Yeah, Becca has her hand up once more.
Okay.
That inspired another thought, which is that I wonder, and maybe ENNA's not the organization for this, but we, as a member of the Bike Walk Commission and someone who's tuned into to the car minimal Norwalkers and our specific needs, with a lot more sidewalks going in, I wonder if ENNA would be able to sort of spearhead some kind of mutual aid for shoveling sidewalks. Because I know for some people who are getting sidewalks, a big concern is the time or the physical ability to clear them. And it is important that we clear them so that people who aren't going to travel by car have a safe way. So if there was some sort of network we could access where people who need help shoveling their sidewalks could get their sidewalks shoveled by a neighbor, a friend, a volunteer, a teenager who could use $20.
I volunteer Rich Bonifant.
There we go. Yep, he's young and healthy. I think that's a great idea, Beck. And actually, the city is supposed to have some mechanism to trigger that. If somebody knows of someone who needs help, or someone themselves who wants to say that they need some help. I think on a lot of our streets, it just happens. I hope it happens the way it does over here, on my street, where people just kind of take notice and will take care of their neighbors. But it could be something that we just put out to encourage people to kind of actively participate in. I don't know that we want to coordinate anything formal, especially if the city already has a mechanism to do that through their community services group.
Totally.
I
I'm
bought
Kind of
my-
a clearinghouse for services like that.
I'm not.
I bought my wife a
city
shovel
mechanism.
for a birthday present.
Yeah, that went over well, huh?
Well,
I brought this up in a past Bike Walk Commission meeting, and at least from TMP's perspective, I was not made aware of any city mechanism other than grassroots mutual aid for helping people get their sidewalks shoveled. And I would hate for that fear of the labor or that fear of getting hurt to be a deterrent to adding more sidewalks. Because I still dream of a day when I'm going to be able to walk from my house on Emerson to the train without having to walk in the street. Not yet, but it's going to come.
Yeah. I think there's always a hot debate around sidewalks for who wants them and who doesn't, and the cost is not just the shoveling; it's also the cost of the maintenance. And then no one wants to take down a tree that's in a sidewalk, but you have roots issues and all of that. But I think it's something that we can certainly encourage people to look into. And I'll double check what the city has looked to do that, because a lot of people were concerned with people getting fines. And that's when the topic came up about if somebody is elderly or they can't afford to hire somebody to come and do it, then what can happen there. And I thought that through community services, somebody could reach out and make arrangements, and maybe through the neighborhood improvement group. Rich, do you happen to know if there was a, I think you're on mute, Rich. There you go.
What are you asking me? I can't hear you.
she wants you to shovel for 15, not 20.
Diane, you're muted.
Oh, I'm muted. Do you happen to know if the city has some mechanism to assist people who are elderly or disabled or don't have the means to pay someone to shovel their walk?
Yeah, reach into your own bank account.
And that's no. Okay, I will check. I will check into that, Becca.
No, honestly, there's been a battle over the years. What's a footpath? What's a sidewalk?
Right.
Who used to do it and who don't do it no more? That kind of thing.
Right.
But if you got me for a second, I was going to say something.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead. I'll just say one other thing though on the snow though. I have seen many streets where like every sidewalk in front of every house is done except for one. And no neighbor on either side bothered to help out whoever didn't do it. Maybe they're away, maybe they're sick, maybe or maybe it's been a battle over the years where look, this dude never does a sidewalk and we're not doing it. But whatever the case is, I've seen it all over the place.
Yeah, well, maybe they helped them out several times and like never got reciprocated. I don't know. Not my issue right now. What I'm saying is, if you come down Cemetery Street and you're turning onto Gregory Boulevard, look at well, look at that sidewalk that never gets hit with sunlight, right? During the winter time, that's going to be an icy slope coming sliding down. But when you get to the corner where you're going to turn onto Gregory Boulevard, look up and you'll see the roof kind of like the corner of that roof, like almost hangs over the sidewalk itself. So you're going to be looking at, you know, 5-foot spears coming down as icicles, like straight down. If you
Wow.
if you look, just take a look when you see it and go like, hey, what am I gonna see when there's no sun ever hitting this side and the icicles are hanging down? Just imagine that when you drive by.
Yeah. Uh, this is one thing where people always say, "What can we do to help you out, Diane?" This is one thing I always ask is, anybody that's halfway decent at taking pictures. That's what I really need. Um, because either I forget when I'm down there, but worse than that, I literally cannot take a picture. I just can't. It doesn't work. But if somebody could get me some pictures of exactly what Rich is talking about,
Yes.
there we go. Thanks, Rich.
Okay.
Because yeah, the icicles and the snow shelf, sliding down and yeah, that's going to be interesting. Okay. Okay.
It's me again. Isn't the potential upside though that then the sidewalk will be shaded in summer, right? Especially if there's potentially people waiting for a bus around there. They won't have to wait in the sun. You won't have to build another bus shelter. And with the state of climate being what it is, we're probably going to have more hot days than freezing ones.
Yeah, but I don't think that would have been a spot there, but and I don't think the bus would have stopped there to begin with, and then there's no opportunity for a bus now because they put the parking in. Not that there would have been any room for it anyway, the way they did this design, but I think on that curb, I'm not sure. I don't know. I guess I could go either way, but
Well, regardless, it'll give
shade is
shade to
good and
pedestrians.
sun is good too. But if we think now about all the sun, someone when this whole development was going in, actually did some drawings for us based on the angle of the sun as it comes around, and where it would hit the cemetery, and it basically like is not going to hit the cemetery. So, there's all kinds of trees and stuff in the cemetery. Um, that for all intent and purposes isn't going to get sun anymore. So I think there's good and bad in terms of sun and shade and some relief. It would have been nice to have public amenities in the front like the ENNA asked for. If you're going to have public amenities, they need to be in the front and people need to know it's public, not like you feel like you're trespassing. And one big public amenity that I always ask for, especially the older I get, is places for people to sit in public, just to have some benches or some covered seating. It's crazy. I don't think I've ever been anywhere where there's such a lack of public seating. And that would have been a great area for it too.
I agree completely. People could sit and eat their sweet Ashleys because those benches fill up outside of there so fast in the summer.
Exactly. Okay, who else do we have there, Charles?
I don't see any hands up.
Really? No. Are people just being shy?
I think so.
Is this that everything is wonderful or that you've all given up and we've just all given up?
No, we're not giving
We're
up.
waving. We're waving. People wanted to put ribbons on the tree, of course, and I encourage folks to do that. And I don't know. Some people have talked about having a public demonstration, and I'm all for that. I can just say like I just don't have the wherewithal at the moment to be able to have ENNA coordinate that. But if someone else is interested in trying to get something going, I think that would be a great idea. And in terms of tying some ribbons on there, I don't think anybody's going to come after us for doing anything. But I just said don't put any white ribbons because that might be a sign of a white flag, and we're throwing in the towel there. Just any other color ribbons would be good.
Diane, it's
Yeah.
Donna Menton. I just wanted to ask a quick question. I don't know if you saw my note in the chat.
Oh,
Um,
no,
one of
I'm not that
what,
good.
can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm listed under Robin, not under Donna. So,
yeah, got it. Hi.
I had looked at the email that was sent from the Connecticut DOT that
Uh-huh.
declined the request.
Mhm.
And the email referenced specifically that we were being declined mostly because there wasn't time to investigate alternative options.
Mhm.
I know that there had been an extension from October, the end of October, I think it was October 26th until this particular time. But then I subsequently read something somewhere that they weren't even going to start work on that drainage system, or once they cut the tree down, nothing was going to start right away.
Mhm.
So what's the timeline, and why do they need to cut the tree down on December 1st? And why don't we have time to investigate other options?
Good question. So, according to the response back from City Hall, and specifically the one that Harry Willing sent to us as well, is that because of the work that they're doing there in the road and the street itself, they need to do this work so that they can get this done before the asphalt plants close in a few weeks, and which doesn't really make sense to me. But I'm not an engineer, and this is why we've asked for kind of a reprieve so that we can see if we can get a civil engineer or someone to take a look at this. But they're saying that it's because that the road work that's being done there has to be done while the asphalt plants are open. And I'm thinking more like you, Donna, to say then just don't do it at all now. Just wait until
Wait till the
the
spring.
asphalt plants open in March, I think. That'll give everybody time to sit back. I just posted today. It's amazing to me. The state DOT just got another award around the tremendous job. I have to give them credit. The tremendous job they did when the bridge caught fire at exit
Oh, yeah.
14 there, and getting that bridge down to reopen the traffic was just a monumental feat, and then getting it rebuilt. But I mean, if we have the engineers and the know-how to do that and a number of other projects I can think around the state, you can't tell me that DOT doesn't have the smarts and the people at their beck and call to be able to sit down and say, how do we save the tree? I mean, we're talking about a connection, to a culvert in one area on one road.
Yeah.
I just think it's a matter of, will at this point that
Yeah.
they don't want to give an inch, and they want to move forward, even though if you see the DOT letter as well, even they reference that the project completion date isn't until next October anyway, October 2026.
Oh, that was 26, the date they were
Yeah.
looking at. I thought it was
Yeah, no,
25.
that's October 2026, exactly.
Okay, so that was my mistake. Oh,
Yeah.
then why,
And so this is why people like me look at these things and say, this absolutely makes no sense.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that they're wrong. What I say, Donna, is this makes no sense. Can somebody please explain this to me like I'm a 6-year-old? Okay,
Mhm.
because that's all we really want. We want an opportunity to hear why this would. First of all, one of our big questions is the way this was presented was our DPW and their consultants going to DOT with an alternative, looking for their blessing. And I don't think it should have happened that way, because this whole thing is so convoluted, because DOT approved the project and told the city, we'll pay for this part if you did this part, but you have to do the drawings and do the engineering. And so everything was intertwined. But I think what should have happened instead is DPW should have gone back to the DOT and said, the community really wants to save this tree. You, DOT, can you help us come up with an alternative that will let us save the tree? Instead of our DPW just sending this one idea that, for all we know, that it wouldn't have flown anyway, but there's no reason they couldn't have asked the DOT to throw some manpower or a consultant on this to say, not can we do it, even say to them, give us a different plan where we could save the tree. I refuse to believe at this point without them explaining to us why this can't be done.
Yeah. So question then, if in fact the tree is cut down, which we're kind of assuming at this point it may, it's kind of like never give up, but they're saying they're just going to put a paved island there. Can we at least make a request that it's a landscaped island, that they replace the tree there and put another tree there, even if it's a smaller one that
Yeah.
grows over years?
Yeah, I don't think they're likely to do that because the first one shouldn't have been done to begin with. I don't know what the landscaping will look like there. I know that it's going to be, and Becca maybe can speak to this more than I can if she's still there. Is going to make a safer route there for somebody to be able to get across the street in a couple of directions. But in terms of actual landscaping, I don't know what they plan to do there, and the chances of likelihood of them doing any kind of a tree that would have any kind of root system is probably
Out of the
not going to
question.
happen. Although they're committed to doing, as many trees as they can in East Norwalk to make up for it. But
Yeah, but big deal.
Right,
That's
exactly.
great, but we want that tree in
Exactly.
that spot, not
Yeah.
in another
And
spot.
by the way, we'll still take the $25,000 from Spinnaker and Descala that we know they're not going to donate to the supposed pier that was going to go in.
Right.
That the DEEP said, no, you're never going to put that in. So
It looks
rather than let
terrible
that
back
money
there.
revert back to them, which is what Steve Kleppen let them do,
Yeah.
we should have that money now to make up for some of the, quality of life impact that
Yeah.
they're reaping the profits off of us.
So Diane, it's Andy
that's my
Keller
opinion.
here. I'm sitting next to Donna, and we're also residents of East Norwalk. We've only been here 10 years, but I'm just curious, since we have a separate taxing district, have we no say in terms of financially how we can in any way influence what's done in East Norwalk? I guess I don't understand that.
Yeah, to a certain extent we do, only because there's a transfer of funds from the TTD Electric that by law has to then be transferred over into the district. And that's where the district budget comes into account every March. So there are funds that come back into the district. A lot of it is for maintenance of Rogers Park, the other parks that the district owns, funding for the library, the funding to maintain the cemetery. In terms of additional funding, we'd have to come up with a list of things that we would want to see funded that come back through the district and
I'm
recommend
sorry.
it.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I guess my comment is more along the lines that we're being taxed, and it doesn't sound like we have representation as to what those monies go to, especially when it comes to developments within East Norwalk. Again, that's just my perspective.
Well,
Am I off base on that?
When you're saying we're being taxed, so you're talking about through the city, though, correct?
Property tax.
Yeah, so the property tax, we not through the taxing district, because we do have a say in where the taxing district money goes to. The property taxes, we have a say because the budget comes up for public comment every year, both the operating budget and the capital budget. The only other thing that could be impacted in East Norwalk, where we have an actual taxing district, is our taxing district actually has the right to impose a tax on us, which it doesn't do, as a separate tax within the taxing district. But the other thing they can do is they can take property by eminent domain if it's within the boundaries of the East Norwalk taxing district. I mean, the TTD district.
I guess I'm looking for some leverage. Why isn't there any tax leverage to us as East Norwalk residents?
I'm not sure what you mean, though. Explain that.
Because it's a state road?
No. I mean, it's not the property that was built on is not a state property. So what I'm saying is as residents of East Norwalk, we pay taxes to the city of Norwalk, but we're in a taxing district. Doesn't the taxing district have some say as to what's built within the taxing district?
No, they don't.
Yeah, that's too bad. Okay, thanks.
Right. Okay, I got it. Okay, I got it. Yeah.
Just
They
Diane,
don't.
can I just give
I'll
a
tell you, that's an interesting question though, because and maybe Alex can speak to this. I don't know if
yeah, just briefly.
yeah.
So uh, when the city used to be made up of several different cities, South Norwalk, Central Norwalk, and they merged in 1913, just like Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island merged in 1913. This was a big national good government movement to merge these tiny little municipalities into a bigger municipality. And the deal was that the taxing districts would retain certain attributes of a municipality while giving over almost all their government powers to the central city. That's why we have four libraries in Norwalk. Each municipality had its own library. That's why we're one of the few that has two Carnegie libraries, because the city of South Norwalk and the city of Norwalk each had a Carnegie library. And the taxing district retains authority over property it owns. That's why, for example, the Rowayton, the sixth district, has jurisdiction over Bailey Beach and some of those properties. But there's no general governmental authority over roads and streets in the third taxing district. That was given over to the city of Norwalk.
Thank you. That's a good
That
explanation.
that is a great question though. Thank you.
Okay, let's go with John. He's had his hand up for a while.
I
Unmute,
think you're
man.
on
Okay.
mute.
Thank you. I just want to mention this is the first time I've been able to attend an ENNA meeting. I've heard great things about ENNA, and now I get to see what a functioning neighborhood association looks like. And it's great. Two things I wanted. I have one question and maybe another question as well. Going back to the taxing districts, Alex, you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but don't each of the taxing districts also retain authority to levy property taxes within the taxing district? And it's my understanding that authority is never used, but it exists. Is that correct?
That's correct. It is used in the sixth district. They levy an extra tax to maintain Bailey Beach, to maintain the Rowayton Civic Center, and the property around it. The third taxing district does not do that and uses revenue from the sale of electricity to fund many municipal, local things. The sixth district does not provide electricity or water, as do the third district, the first district, and the second district. So yes, hypothetically there's that power. I don't think it would be well received, quite frankly, by neighbors. And John, if you want to John, if you want to voluntarily pay it from up on Chestnut Hill Road where you live down here, we'd be glad to accept a voluntary donation.
Right. So Alex points out I'm in Cranberry, so I would not be subject to any of the taxing districts taxing overreach or efforts. But no, I'm happy just paying the property tax that I paid to the city of Norwalk. It's gone up a fair amount, I've noticed, but I think I'm in the same boat with everyone else. So I suppose I cannot complain. The other question I had is just going back to the oak tree. Where and Diane or Alex, you may have the answer. Where does the buck stop? I mean, I know we've heard various versions, like, well, the city said that they tried to do, propose an alternative, and CDOT explains that they don't have time to do that or whatever. In any case, is there a person that sort of at the end of the day is the decider, or is that can legitimately say the buck stops here?
Well, I can give you the nice version and let Diane give you the harsh version, which you may have read about in her.
Can you
her
switch
email.
roles? Maybe
Yeah.
Alex, you give us the harsh version,
No, I can't. I'll let Diane does it much better than I do.
okay.
It's under the jurisdiction of the state DOT.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, what happened was that the city, in my view, slept on its uh, representing the interests of East Norwalk. And by the time that we raised the issue, things had moved so far along that the DOT may have been right saying there wasn't enough time. There would have been enough time had the city raised the issue sooner. When we had the public hearing, I asked the DPW, have you proposed an alternative to the state that would save the tree and improve the drainage? And they said no. I said, well, would you please do that? They said yes. But that was, in the bottom of the ninth inning.
Mhm.
And I think, unfortunately, if the city had acted much, much sooner, it was feasible to, from an engineering point of view, to relocate the culvert and drainage, retain the tree, and have enough time to deal with the asphalt plants and the other stuff. I think in the end, that's what unfortunately happened.
So, Alex, I was not present at that hearing. Can you say when they said yes, who is they?
Whoever ran the meeting, it was, I thought the DPW or Traffic and Mobility. I forget who.
Yeah, it was both.
Yeah.
But Vanessa
And they
Valadares.
did. I mean, they did
did.
present an
Yeah.
alternative. Harry is right.
Mhm.
They did present an alternative to the DOT, state DOT, but it was so late in the game that it was almost a pro forma gesture. If they had presented that alternative a year ago, it'd be a very different ballgame. That's my view of it. I don't know if Diane wants to add anything.
Yeah, I think because when they were looking at these plans to begin with, they could have said, we have this mature, healthy oak tree here. So while we're doing our designs, let's make sure we can save the tree. Screw the development and the parking and the lane change and all that. Let's just talk about drainage. Although I have a lot of bones to pick on that, believe me. But when they first saw that this was likely, they could have stopped right there and said, we need to come up with a plan to save the tree. Even though, they contend that the tree should never have been there. It's a debate over who planted the tree. It shouldn't have been planted in that little traffic island thing. Third taxing district maintains it, but it's actually on state property. And by the way, I did actually go back to the state maps because I thought maybe that part of the island and the tree wasn't actually part of the state right away, because where 136 turns, it turns right there onto Gregory. Not to the right, it turns onto Gregory at the left. But it is technically on state property. And so it shouldn't have been there, to begin with. But I think had our DPW and our transportation, mobility, and planning folks recognized the value of this tree, whether they thought it should be there or not, I think one of the first things they should have done is let's plan to keep this tree, unless and until we come up with something that says we can't. And it doesn't appear that they ever did that. And I have to say that um, I'd have to actually go back through tapes and transcripts of our meetings. But someone had reported into me that when we were reviewing all of these plans, specifically about the roadway, that someone actually specifically asked about the oak, and that a representative from the city in one of our meetings said, "Oh no, the oak tree is staying." And so, I'd have to kind of go back and find out like who said that and when. But I've looked at the plans a billion times, and it wasn't evident to me that tree was coming down. So shame on me. But again, when they show you these plans, you're looking at it on a screen where nothing is really to scale for us. And they've got all of the traffic markings and the road markings and the drainage markings and the utility markings, and all you're seeing is lines all over the place. And you're not able to discern on it to say, this is where a tree is coming down or this is where a tree is going in. It would have been left to them to make it absolutely clear that tree was coming down, and it certainly wasn't clear to any of us until Kat Anderson wandered by and saw a notice on the tree that said the tree is coming down. And even then, I think it's crazy. Some of you guys may not know this unless you read the emails, but even our tree warden didn't know that tree was coming down. So an assistant tree warden, coming out of DPW or operations, actually posted it at a height and in a place that was hard to see, and didn't even notify the tree warden. The first time Chris Torrey heard about that tree coming down was from us, with Kat Anderson and ENNA and other people that went to object. So the whole thing is, broken process, broken communication, misplaced priorities, for sure. And the fact that it happens to be state property, when you say, the buck stops where, in this case, it is with the DOT only because it's state property. And it's unfortunate. I would have thought that we'd get some more sympathy because Alicia King, who lives in Norwalk and was our chief of staff here at one time for the mayor, is actually the deputy commissioner of the DOT. And I thought maybe she could, be a sympathetic ear. But we heard crickets from her. Unfortunate.
So could I just welcome John Levin to our group and thank you, John.
Yeah, hey, John.
Thank you for participating.
Yeah, we don't hold it against you that you live in Cranberry, John. We don't hold that against you. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
Okay, Jim has his hand up. You can unmute.
There
Jim.
we go. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to expand on a couple of things that was said. His Honor, Alex, you'll always be the mayor. I appreciate that, Alex.
Thank you, Jim.
But expanding on the third taxing district, there is one thing that a lot of little people don't know about the municipalities, and South Norwalk has one, which I worked for many years, and East Norwalk has their own electricity. We do, residents, ratepayers of East Norwalk, do get a benefit on our mill rate. And that mill rate comes in the form of the supply of street lighting and the maintenance of street lighting. If you notice, the power for the streetlights of East Norwalk and the third taxing district comes from third taxing district electric department. The maintenance of it comes from the linemen and the service of third taxing district. It's not Eversource. It's not UI. Same thing occurs at South Norwalk. So the residents, ratepayers that pay the electric, it's slight. It's not a lot. But we've got the best electric utility in third tax by far, and that's coming from inside, knowing and seeing other utilities. All right, so moving on from there, the property next to the old Rite Aid that was sold to the owner of Penny's and the Ludlow Center. That has there any been discussions? I know the state bought it for, I think it was 3 million or 4 million. It's a parking lot now. It's going to be built at some point, unless it's going to stay a parking lot. It's question one. Two, and like Diane, if you could expand on the Pennies. I was there briefly the other day, Sunday. It was packed full of patrons, and I have my own opinion, and it's not nice, to be honest with you. I think it could have been a gem due to its location, and if it just was upkept, and it was not, obviously. And even the reaction to the long-term staff, who were excellent, the waiters, waitresses, 2 days notice they were given, which was just really not nice, just pure simple terms. The second is I like to talk about St. Thomas. So if you know anything about St. Thomas School, we understand, and I understand as a parishioner from St. Thomas, that there were a number of other private schools, Montessori or what other schools, that wanted to buy that property. And they either were turned down by the current priest, which I don't think he would have enough authority to do that, or the archdiocese themselves. And then there's also talk about that property, the church, and the small little building that's right adjacent to Penny's. Everybody kind of forgets that little single building that's there right next to the gas station. I'm just throwing tidbits out there for discussion. Lastly is, and I'm really disappointed. I've someone mentioned representation. We have two common council members that are from the East Norwalk, and not a word, not a attendance, not nothing. Give us some information. If it wasn't for you, Diane, and a group of others, nothing. I mean, there's our representation. When we go to vote, we vote for a council at large, and we vote for two council members of each district. I don't even know who our members are, to be honest with you. And I'm not even talking politics. I'm not talking Republican, Independent, Democrat. But who are they? I have no idea. Period. I'm done.
Well, I would want to get to a bunch of other people too if we have hands up, but
Yeah,
I'll do
no, I
these
know.
rapid
I could
fire.
rant all night.
The so I won't disagree with Jim. I think that the owners of pennies have not been what we would call good corporate citizens and neighbors. When you take the dilapidated hojos, in fact, ENNA, prior to my day with the organization, was one of the ones that fought hard to get the dilapidated building torn down and clean up the property, and then took forever to get the sign down as well. But that had been an eyesore and a problem for I don't know how long. And then, of course, you had the fire that happened in the Rogers Square strip behind the laundromat that they also own, and they don't seem to have made any good faith effort to actually lease that. They've done the bare minimum where they post that it's for rent, but um, I don't know of anyone that's had any success actually talking to them about renting any space there. So that's been left empty. And the facade of it from the park side is okay. It's not bladed or anything. But we certainly don't want empty storefronts in East Norwalk. And since we really are striving to have mom and pop businesses and not national chains, that's the ideal spot for us to be able to support startups and local businesses. And then there's Penny's Diner, which over the years has been no investment in at all. And they also, to my knowledge, have never been in a position of where we know that other businesses, um, and you folks maybe, some of you may know that we have kind of a sister organization, not related, but East Norwalk Business Association. And they're active with businesses in East Norwalk. And many of those businesses step up to donate time or money or resources within the community. And I can't recall Penny's ever having done anything like that. I agree it could have been a gem. I would have liked to have seen a diner stay. I think diners are um, nostalgic. I think they have eclectic menus. I think there's something for everyone. And um, I think it's, part of history over there, but it would have needed a better ownership and renovation. And I'm just hearing now, it's breaking my heart. I've known some of those employees for decades, literally, that they were only given 2 days notice. And that's, considering they made $3 million from our tax dollars selling the Hojo's lot. Yes, our tax dollars paid to buy that lot, and we had no say in that. Um, I just don't think they've been a good neighbor. Now, as to pennies, Steve Kleppen, the planning and zoning director, has had his eye on several parcels on East Avenue for some time. One is Penny's Diner, and the other one is St. Thomas School, um, which he absolutely hates that building. He dissed it every time he could during all of the zoning changes, and most of us love the building. It's one of few that actually has a setback with some green space in the front and some pretty trees and a bench. And I always love walking past it and sometimes sitting there. In any event, those two we know are targeted for sure. Um, I can only imagine that both will be up for mixed use, maybe not even mixed use, but it'll be high density residential with limited, if any, minimum parking requirements and maximum height. And that's probably what we can look forward to. And these things, I'll just say now, are tough to battle once the zoning regulations are in. And it's you don't have a willing political administration that's willing to go back and take a look at the people that sit on the zoning commission who can modify these things to protect us going forward. Then we're left with the zoning regulations we have. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I'll say this, the law is on the side of regulations, and that's the way it should be. And these developers that are coming forward are going to stick to the letter of the law, and then there's nothing we can do about it. If they're filing applications that meet the regulations, then there's little we can do about it. The other thing, though, that's alarming is that some of these regulations are changing even as we speak, where things that used to be at least special permits, where we knew that we would at least have a bite at the apple with a public hearing, and where we could dispute the 13 special conditions that have to do with the impact on our quality of life. Many of those uses now have been changed to what's called a site plan review. And a site plan review only requires an applicant to meet the requirements of the regulations. Once they do that, the zoning commission cannot legally deny their application. If they've met the specifications of the regulations, there's no legal recourse to deny the application. And so not only have things been bad, things are getting worse, I would say, in my opinion. The parking lot, this is subject to change and we'll be the last to know, no doubt. Boy, I hate to be such a Debbie Downer, but the last word on that was that ultimately the state would turn that over to the city for parking, probably go to the parking authority as commuter parking. But I could also see that being developed as well. I think that at least with the Key Food coming in, with a market coming in, I would hope to, maybe ENNA can even facilitate this, is to have some agreement between the parking authority now and Key Foods to allow for some short-term parking there for shoppers who are driving and not walking over. And then in terms of the little building next to Penny's, you're right. We always forget about Frank the tailor there, Continental Tailors, right? Hang on a second, guys. Sorry, my nose is going again. Yeah, I'm sure that's all part of what's ultimately going to happen with Penny's, and that's a pretty big parcel there. So, we can expect to see something, coming in. I also raised the we also have Penny Press right behind Penny's Diner, and we don't know what their long-term intentions are. They've been here forever. I hope they stay forever. But sometimes somebody comes and knocking on your door with a big old envelope of money. Everybody's got to make their own decisions on, in their own best interest, and you can't fault them for that. So the thing that's most troubling to me, guys, is not just that these things happen, but the fact is that we're blocked from knowing about them happening until they're a done deal. And that's really kind of a weird area to be in, because if you have someone who's looking at putting in a big development and they may not even own the property yet, they certainly don't want to divulge anything that's going to, prohibit them being able to get a good deal on a property by something slipping out, or being able to negotiate something else. So to a certain extent, I think that when you have someone who's looking to develop a parcel, they may not want to have everything out in the open right away. But I think every reasonable person would agree that once it gets to a point where they're working with city staff on an application, there isn't any reason why it can't be public knowledge at that point, because otherwise it's just too late in the game. When Steve Kleppen tells us, well, we don't have an application, he's meaning that, literally that they haven't filed the application. And he'll tell you it's not an application until they apply. But what you don't see, like, for example, with Cemetery Street, as best I can tell, that started 2 to 2.5 years before, maybe even 3 years before it ever saw the light of day, or even a rumor that they might be doing something. So I think a lot of this has to do with, broken processes here, really. Okay. I think we have Lisa again, Charles.
Yeah,
We'll go till 8:30, guys.
okay. Lisa, you still there?
Yes, good evening. Two things, back to the oak tree. Somebody at one point mentioned something about saving the trunk of the tree to maybe have some sort of whatever sculpture or work done with that. Is there anything that can be um, done to make that happen?
I think that's actually a great idea, and I think actually radio host Lisa Wexler mentioned that too, in addition to somebody either on social media or someplace else, to at least take what can be of the tree, or to be able to use it for habitat, to put places for animals to, birds to put their woodpeckers, whatever stuff they would do. But um, there's another curious thing. The gal who originally filed the legal objection on the first notice of it coming down, Cat, um, both she and I only found out about this decision that the tree was coming down from a voicemail from the tree warden. And from the day that he left the voicemail, literally within a couple of hours of that, because I was working, I didn't get his call, then I heard his voicemail. And I've been calling him since, and she has too, and he has not returned our calls. So I don't know if word came down from on high to not communicate with us. I can't imagine why he wouldn't. He's been a friend to East Norwalk, and he's been trying his hardest to save the tree. And all of a sudden, we are incommunicado. So, but one of the things when I emailed him today to ask him to please call me so we could talk, was one of the topics, Lisa, to see if there's something that he knows of, whoever the contractor is that's going to be taking this down, if there's anything that could be salvaged for a local artist or a woodworker or something that could maybe be given back to the community in an appropriate spot so we can remember. But if nothing else, I think, this may become the new battle cry, where, as I suggested, remember Mill Pond was going to be the battle cry going forward with development. It may be, remember the oak. We probably should start getting T-shirts made up right now with that. But I think it's a great idea. I do.
Okay. And then kind of a organizational city question. Can you explain what the difference is between planning and zoning and the Board of Appeals? And when a Board of Appeals does appealing, is it for essentially for the developer, if you will, or for the residents? And if this is too esoteric, then we don't have to discuss it. But
It's
I'm
actually
just trying to figure out how it all works.
It's actually for either, but I'm so glad we have Alex still on with us. Alex, you want to give us a layman's
Well, sure.
version
Just
of when something goes to appeal?
sure. Well, basically, a property owner can appeal for a variance from the zoning regulations based on some demonstrable hardship. And of course, what constitutes a real hardship is to some degree an objective matter, and unfortunately, to some degree, a subjective matter. And there are many times when there are real hardships that are not recognized, and there are other times when things that are not hardships are recognized and a variance is granted to the benefit of the property owner. But the basic law is that if you can prove a demonstrable hardship, then the board is entitled to grant you a limited variance from the zoning regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's a question in chat. Robin says she heard of that Norwalk has a legacy tree program. Is that something that exists?
I think I've seen something like that in the new tree ordinance that either just got passed or is about to get passed. Um, but I'm not familiar with it, and I don't know um, that this oak tree would have been anything that qualifies under how they're defining it. But that's certainly something we should look into. Thanks for that, Donna.
Okay, also, any word on complete streets and how it's going to affect Seaview Avenue?
Um, beyond the original design that was
Yes,
done,
yes.
or just the timing. I
Um,
don't know that there's any changes to the design that was presented to the community. If there has been, haven't seen it. Um, but I also don't know anything about the timing of it either. Um, because it then the fact that you have a plan for something doesn't mean that it's that nothing gets done until you get appropriated for funding in a budget, and then in the new fiscal year for whatever year that happens in afterwards, then to put things out to bid. Um, we will definitely be keeping an eye on that, though, because a lot of folks may not know, but you certainly know, Charles, is that one of the recommendations in there is to change the angle. Oh boy, talk about screwing over Mill Pond. So the other end of Mill Pond, which is on Seaview, across from Overton's and Harbor Lights, the city's suggesting changing that um, the to well, you could probably explain that better.
okay, yeah,
Thanks.
that
And I'm
that area,
cautious.
yes, that area with the picnic benches across from Overton's, they are planning on putting parking there and moving the actual angle of the park so it does not look down Mill Pond. It basically looks straight down Seaview Avenue, and you get a small fraction of the pond, in view. Which to squeeze more parking in there, they're claiming it's for businesses. It's instead of just expanding the park to be wrapped around so more people could enjoy it, would be the logical thing in my mind. But they're just looking to put a lot more parking on Seaview Avenue. They're talking about putting additional parking in Vets Park as part of the plan, and also relocating the parking from one side of Seaview over to the other, which would be where they're proposed to be a promenade. So another thing that was concerning is the actual entrance off of Seaview Avenue into Osborne, where I'm living. They are going to narrow that. I don't know if they were proposing to put a little island in there with a pollinator garden or rain garden or something like that was in the plan. It just looked like it was just made no sense to me, but it was definitely shown to the people back then. I still have some of the drawings for that, actually.
ENNA, of course, objected strongly to changing the layout of Mill Pond to have parking there because the angle that Charles is talking about, you actually would be the public viewing and would literally be like at the bottom of East Avenue, where it comes out to Seaview. So you'd be looking more like across the pond, and not up the pond to where like you can see, straight up the pond now coming from the end at Seaview. The other thing that was surprising with that is that that plan actually would take a private property for someone's driveway that was there in order to make that work. And they never even bothered to notify that property owner. Actually, ENNA reached out and notified him. He had no clue that this was in a drawing. So, um, that's going to be an issue down the road as well. So, yeah, hopefully they'll go back to the drawing board with that because that makes no sense. And I think the businesses are going to need to, we should not be taking away park space and that vista of the pond to accommodate parking there. Businesses should, need to get creative and come up with some other ideas. And if there is parking at Veterans Park, that would accommodate the businesses there on Seaview, I'm okay with that. But I'm not okay with that in the absence of the city opening it up for residential parking for the people that are already crammed over there. There's no reason why the people who live on right there can't park in that park.
Right.
I mean, somebody can disagree with me, of course, but the city contended that they didn't want to have any liability on the part of the city, but they would have no liability the same way they have no liability if somebody slams into your car when you're parked on the street. The city doesn't take any responsibility for that. You go to your insurance company and say my car was hit or broken into or what have you. It's just crazy. It's okay.
On
eh,
on that note,
yeah, let's get to Rich. Before we come back to you, I just want to make sure Charles has hit everybody who is there anybody who hasn't spoken yet?
There was just one comment in the chat
Okay.
from Becca, if they had any research demonstrating the need for more parking and what was their reasoning not to use a shuttle or biking, walking, public transit.
Yeah, I think that's great. Most of their research is that we hear is actually, somebody asked us to, or we hear that. Nothing in like real research, unfortunately. In fact, the parking spaces on Cemetery Street, when we kept pushing for, what are you talking about that we need parking for commercial businesses? Well, when it seemed evident that we were about to file a Freedom of Information request to get exactly what those communications were, then they finally fessed up that it was one business, the ice cream parlor, who was looking to get more, was parking, which I understand. But hey, you bought the business, you knew what it was like, and if people want ice cream bad enough, they'll find a place to park or they'll walk or they'll go another time. But that's who it was. So all the meetings you were in where the commercial businesses are asking for more parking. When push came to shove, it was one business, and I think on Seaview Avenue, that has been an ongoing discussion with City Hall, with Harbor Lights, and I think even escalated through to the mayor for when they were looking to do parking there as well.
Okay, can I just add one more thing? Do you have any more information on what they're doing in Vets Park as far as expanding the docks and how that'll bring more people with boats and,
Yeah.
into the area?
Yeah, but that's been a major project for years. I don't follow it that closely because I'm not into boating and I don't really understand that community. But the visitor docks apparently have needed to be expanded and improved for years, to be able to provide some more access there. What we want is we want an active waterway, and water dependent uses versus residential at the water. And so I think there was a strong need to be able to have visitor docks here. So, and as I understand it, those are short term. If there's anybody on here in the boating community, please correct me if I'm wrong, but just by the very nature of it, visitor, I believe it's short term docking, so that people can come to the community, they can enjoy restaurants and um, the aquarium and other amenities and entertainment here in Norwalk. But I believe it's all short term visitor docks. I've seen the layout occasionally when I'm on meetings for other things, but there's a ton of information on it that you can take a look at in the Harbor Commission documents and their meetings and their agendas. I can tell you though something that we're with the docks and when you're speaking about Veterans Park, and someone reminded me of this the other day, or today it may have been. I'm sorry, I have brain fog. Um, do you guys all realize that the Eversource lines that are for the walk bridge that were actually originally the electrical lines were part of the walk bridge are now undergrounded under the river, and they come up through like underneath the docks and then under Veterans Memorial Park. Um, it's take a whole other evening to walk through how all of that happened is beyond me. It's just incredulous. But one of the things that I found out, or someone told me, is that no one has required Eversource to actually post the legal signs that they do everywhere else that would indicate that there's high voltage lines that run underground. And not only haven't they done it, apparently no one's pushing to ensure that it gets done. At this point, there's no intent to do that. So um, if there's any work that ever has to be done at that part of the dock area that's there at the river where it comes across, or any major improvements in Veterans Memorial Park that would require digging down, it would be extremely costly and could be dangerous as well. I don't know whatever happened with getting Eversource to foot the bill. If there was ever an expense for having to, try to manage a project that we had to deal with electrical lines underneath there, but just an interesting fun fact for everybody. Okay, we can go another minute or two if anybody else has their hands up, or
Alex, you could jump in.
you're on mute.
Thank you. I just want to thank Jim Anderson for raising the issue of the employees at Penny's. When I was mayor, I used to have a lot of breakfast meetings, and I called it City Hall East, and got to know the waitresses and waiters very well. They had me write recommendations for their kids for college and get to meet them after graduation, and it was a real community benefit. And Jim, if you ever find out how we can help the employees, and I think that generally the East Asian Indian community did a lot to populate that staff, just like the Greek community used to do a lot to populate Pepperidge Farm when it was in Norwalk. So it's a real loss, and thank you, Jim, for letting us know about them.
Hey,
Yeah, if
you're welcome.
there's
I
any
don't
way,
have,
Jim, that we could find out if there's anything that we can do, how we can help.
unfortunately, I don't have any personal contact information. Debbie was there for, I think she said, no, close to 25 years.
Mhm.
The other fellow was there another 20 something years. I mean, they were really
Yeah,
good
they have
people.
some relatives who work at the Dunkin' Donuts located at the mobile station
Wow.
at
Oh, that's good.
136 in East Avenue. I know there's been some husband and wives. One worked at Penny's, one worked at Dunkin' Donuts there. We may be able to find out
I could
some
ask.
connections there.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Rich.
Oh, thank you. Somehow the hand thing don't work. Anyway, going back to one of your points about the mill pond and the parking lot,
Mhm.
I was maybe I was chairman of land use and building management a long time ago, or on the Parks and Rec committee, I forget. But the Gavrilides family wanted to buy that parking lot on the mill pond on that side. And I had to be the bad guy to tell them no, because A, you're using it anyway, so why do you want to buy it? And B, if you take away parkland, you have to make up for it someplace else. Okay, everybody needs to remember that. If you're gonna give away parkland, you got to make up for it and come up with an equal value someplace else. So, actually, they left pretty. They weren't mad that they didn't get their way. They understood, like, okay, I can use that parking lot and I don't have to pay for it. But anyway, that's what happens when you got a public place right across from a booming business. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Charles, we have anything in chat?
Let's see. Well, But Becca put a few comments in there. I don't know if she's still on and would like to reiterate.
I'm here. Let's see. We talked about the parking study on Seaview. I shared my thoughts about maybe if you host an Oyster Fest, you should have to pay for there to be more Norwalk buses that day. And then specifically on the topic of parking at Sweet Ashley's, I wondered over on Hanford Place in South Norwalk, there's some retail spaces in the residential parking and like the apartment building parking across from Sono Baking. Maybe we could ask businesses on Van Zandt to strike a similar deal with Sweet Ashley's because that is a very popular East Norwalk business and we don't want them to suffer, or lose business. We want a healthy competition between them and Mr. Frosty for the seasons that they're both open.
Yeah, that's it. That's an interesting point. But when the new operator first opened there, people were had written or were posting, I think, on social media that the parking was really tough, and his response was just park in the apartment building next door because it's always empty, which I found very interesting because he doesn't own that building, and I didn't think it was very neighborly of him to instruct his customers to go and trespass on somebody else's property to park. Now, if he comes up with some agreement with that property owner that during certain hours people can park there, I think that's great. Or with the church, etc. I think that's great, but I don't think you should encourage people to go on other properties to park there.
Oh, we could encourage those properties to have some retail spots, some short turnaround, especially if parking minimums, if it's a way to help with the new housing law and parking minimums, be like, oh, but these ones are for retail.
Yeah.
Because we do want people to come
in
and shop at our places. I want someone to buy Victoria's Deli so badly.
I think the in the new zoning regulations, they really put a push on what's called shared parking. So I think going forward they'll be encouraging that more, but it's certainly nothing that we'd want to force upon a property owner. And which deli are you looking to buy or sell?
There's the awning says Victoria's Deli. It's on Van Zandt, and it now has property for sale signs on it. It's down close to Lala Liquors.
Okay, and it says property for sale on it.
I forget if it said sale or rent. I will look the next time I am walking on Van Zandt, and I will send you a picture.
Yeah. Anytime anybody sees something that says for sale, send a red flag if it's in East Norwalk.
Anytime you see me biking in East Norwalk, take my picture too.
Thanks. Yeah, pictures are good. Pictures are good too.
Okay, one final thing. Any updates on resident parking permits?
Yeah. So it was on the parking authority's agenda to lay out how that whole process is going to work, and I don't think they've decided like who's going to be working on this thing yet, but we've asked to make sure that there's a stakeholder, at least a couple of stakeholder groups that are on the committee that looks at this. I'm not holding out any hope knowing how the parking authority operates. However, they're doing this where there's going to be multiple public hearings with 30-day periods, which we're not normally entitled to. And I think that's really good. That's a good thing. So what it means is that they'll come up with a draft, which is what I think we need to be stakeholders on in the beginning with the draft plan. Then they're going to post that and have a 30-day comment period with a public hearing. When they hear back from the public and get all the comments together, they're going to go back, revise the draft, fine tune everything, and then put it out for public hearing again. And I think that's really good. Rich and John and others here and Alex certainly could tell you that a lot of times things will go to public hearing and they'll actually vote on it that night. Like there's no consideration for whatever the feedback was. But this time it looks like they're really going to take their time with it and make sure that there's plenty of time for public review. I don't think that there's any necessarily deadline on that though, on the timing. I just think they're going to get started on it and I hope that they take their time on it. I don't think it should be rushed. We've waited long enough at this point that I'd rather take enough time to get this thing right, than to just get anything and they say that they did it. Okay, is my head getting chopped off again in the goat screen?
Yes.
Oh, Lord. Yes, I'm plagued with the technology. All right, everybody. I will, as always, you can email in if you have any questions or comments or suggestions. There's a bunch of questions tonight. I'll get something out over the weekend in an email. In the meantime, I hope everybody has a happy and healthy and safe Thanksgiving holiday weekend. And we'll see you via email and in December. And thank you, everybody, for hopping on tonight.
Thank you, Dan.